Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis, personal response, and discussion of how these chapters connect to the rest of the series. As usual, we start these videos with a reading of the newest chapter that we are on. This is chapter 60. Lesson 1-2. Down. I don't see him. Is he dead? Who knows? Oh, there he is. He's charging her. He's passing her. Oh man, what was that? If she hits me like that again, I'm a goner. I don't know how much it'll help, but I'm wearing that headgear. How does this work? Mr. Kurosaki, like this. Tie it onto your forehead and scream at the top of your lungs. Take the power of justice, the armor and headband of justice. Protect yourself. Okay, got it. On my forehead, like this. No, I can't do it. Ah, this is no time to worry about looking stupid. What, and end up like you? Ah, sheesh, oh well. Take the power of justice, the armor and headband of justice. Now I'm ready. He actually put it on. Hey, shut up! Bleach. Chapter 60. Lesson 1-2. Down. Put it on your head and put the ends of the tubes together. Okay. Now I'm ready. Do your worst, little girl. Nice fleeing. Ah, shove it! It's a defensive strategy. Sheesh, I don't think this headgear's gonna save me. That girl's dynamite. If she hits me again, I'm roadkill. Wait a second. I'm outrunning her. If I could do that, then maybe I could dodge her punches? And maybe I could do it. Ha. I won't hit your face. I won't hurt you. I'm just gonna tap your headgear a little. I'm so much bigger than her. One tap ought to do it. There. I grazed her. Safe. Huh? Oh, I lost. Darn, let me try again. I'll beat her this time. No, it's congratulations time. That's lesson 1. You passed. What? How? She beat me like I owed her money. Well, yes. I only said knockout before you're knocked out. I never said you had to knock a Ruru out to pass, did I? What? This girl has Soul Reaper level combat skills. A human Konpaku doesn't stand a chance against her. Are you still having trouble breathing? What? Hey, actually. And moving. Better, isn't it? How long? A little while. Of course. This lesson was about one thing, whether or not you could survive the first blow. That's all. You see, spirit energy is increased most quickly when a Kanpaku is placed in a life or death situation, so we exposed you to mortal danger. If your spirit energy increased, you would evade the subsequent punches and live happily ever after. What if it didn't increase? Then you'd be dead. Why you? No skin off your nose, huh? Come, it was worth the risk. Your spirit energy did increase. So let's celebrate by going straight to, a dinner? A party? What the? Straight to lesson 2. A lesson? Yes. If you insist upon going to the Soul Society, you'll need it. Are you willing? My lessons aren't for the faint of heart. It took me a while to realize it, but Orihime's got guts. A lesson! Yay! And that is it for Chapter 60 of the Bleach manga. Let's get right into talking about this chapter, as there are quite a few things to talk about as usual. So we'll be discussing, first and foremost, the art and the narrative, and kind of how that moves things along, what function it all serves, and how it's operating panel to panel, page to page, and throughout the whole chapter, right? Looking at both the micro and, well, the macro, and especially the macro when it comes to the next session, which is spoiler related, but not for this one. One thing that I do kind of like is that, of course, we're getting right back into that fight that we were left off with before, with Ururu training with Ichigo, right? And if you remember before, she just delivered a very devastating attack. So the smoke's kind of clearing, and we closed in on Ururu, and she's got this very reticent look to her, which I like that a lot, that we get her with these sort of almost forlorn kind of looks. It really helps to juxtapose against what we get later from her. Of course, I do like that, knowing what we do know now, obviously Kisuke and Tessai are very invested on, like if he died after that first hit, right? Because that's the idea, right? If Ichigo could survive the first like initial kind of barrage, then this is no problem. If he can't, well, he's dead. So that is exactly what they are looking for. Of course, here he comes tumbling out the other side. So, as we know, Ichigo's still fine. I love this kind of comedic bit as he gets up and then she's just kind of there, triangled out, and we get him running straight past her. Of course, from the previous volume, what am I saying? Volume, previous chapter, we had the elaboration that if Ichigo put on these defensive things, then he'd be able to survive. Otherwise, he might not survive even one attack from her. And now Ichigo's taking this a little bit more seriously, right? Of course, as we come to find out, all that he needed to do was survive one attack. So I don't know that the headband of justice and all that other stuff is really necessary. You have to wonder if, like, how much of it is just a diversion on Kisuke's part versus, like, something that was actually a critical part of the training, versus just, like, there for a gag. I feel like it has to be kind of important to an extent, but, it's interesting to see exactly what that extent is. Certainly here we get this idea of Ichigo being willing to, like, underestimate an enemy, right? Until they've proven their actual power. So that's a kind of cool place that we get because, had he been taking this seriously from the get-go, then maybe he would have put all this on right away instead of what has come to pass where he's had to avoid a few hits. I do like that this whole page sets up this framing of Jinta, Tessai, and Urahara. I love that they're different heights, kind of watching Ichigo get knocked all the way to the right. He gets up, they watch him kind of in the middle, and then they watch him cut across to the left. I think that follows a kind of, like, it's funny, like, momentum for this punchline, and I do enjoy it. Of course, we get this headband, which I think is actually pretty cool looking. The headband of justice, and we certainly do get a little bit of Urahara having fun at Ichigo's expense, right? What's interesting here is, of course, he calls out like this whole thing about like screaming at the top of your lungs and evoking this headband of justice and all of that. But like, as we know, like, evocation is a pretty important thing within Bleach, right? So this is believable within the actual power structure that's been established, right? We had Renji show up and be like, "How's Zabimaru?" and his Zanpakuto literally transformed. We've had Rukia, chant out entire Kido in order to cast them, and we've had both Orihime and Chad kind of call out for this power and literally manifest it. So, it's not like this would be completely unheard of. And if anything, this is Kisuke kind of teaching Ichigo that in a way, which is surprising because it's easy to overlook as kind of a comedic moment. But I think it just reinforces more of that underlining kind of logic of how the power system in Bleach sort of works. Um, and I think that's cool. It's something that maybe is easy to overlook, or even, like I said, right off as solely being a gag. But the only reason why it exists and works as a gag is because it is like punchline and then delivery, right? The punchline being that it's got this kind of ridiculous incantation, the expectation that you have to do something like an incantation to actually, manifest and wield the powers of a thing. But then, of course, the joke being that, hey, it is kind of silly to say all of this, and it's not going to actually protect you or do anything special. So that's good. It's all good stuff. I like that. Again, we get more of Ichigo. Still like being maybe a little too self conscious, and I think that this is also ironing that out, right? That no matter what happens in this whole journey to save Rukia, he's going to have to treat every enemy seriously, like it's a life or death situation, and he's going to have to, not worry about looking ridiculous or anything like that. Like, he can't be too concerned about his own image or how others are going to perceive him. He just has to do what is right. So here he's like throwing it out again because of the way that he might be perceived. I love that we get Uru just kind of smashing in here with these sort of noodly limbs. It really sells the moment of her just kind of flying by this insane power of hers, and her body really not physically matching up to quite how powerful she is. Great face on Ichigo here. Very good stuff. Also, very good depiction of Kisuke being a real shitter, and our typical spit take sort of panel with our character kind of flushed down in the left. Anyway, all good comedic stuff so far, but also, as we talked about, has a bit of world building, a bit of leaning into the structures that we're coming to understand. I'm pretty sure that the Karen and Yuzu as little angels gets reused for the first intro for Bleach for Asterisk. Unfortunately, we don't get Ultraman Ichigo and this other kind of kaiju Ururu. I'm not as familiar enough with Ultraman to tell you exactly the name of that enemy. Anyway, and of course, I love this. We get Kisuke here in the back, amused with his fan. All in all, great stuff. Also reaffirms this sense of, one, Ichigo is the protagonist, which is I'm always about, but then two, this idea of Kisuke being this kind of like trickster in the shadows sort of character. I like that, and I like that we get that kind of visually played out here in that chapter cover. Anyway, I like that he decides to put these ends together right whenever he throws them around. They all clack into place, so it's clearly got some sort of power to it. It's not not supernatural. I do believe that this is yet another item in Bleach Brave Souls because they really had to plumb for accessories. It's not like you could just let everybody use like Zabimaru, right? Or Shunshin Rika or something, because that's a character specific thing. So they had to find like things in Bleach that aren't character specific, like the Soul Candy dispensers or the headband of justice. And so it's kind of amusing to see the things that ended up as accessories in that game, which is currently, the current like lead mobile game for it, as far as I understand. Anyway, I do like these shots of Ichigo now that he's got this helmet armor on. I really like the kind of Roman face guard parts of it. I think it's a good look for Ichigo. Of course, I like him like whipping back around here with the chain kind of going around him. If you do remember, his chain is still connected to his living, conscious body, and I like that there's some attention drawn to that chain here. That he's given this sort of dynamic pose with it, where it's clear that it's spindling along his body and kind of whipping around as he himself turns to face Ururu. But yeah, the importance of the chain and the significance of it being like very clear in the visuals here is an important thing, because as we'll come to see, it does get shattered or severed later. Anyway, of course, do your worst, little girl. He hits his hands together and she just blasts a rock into pieces. This is a moment that I do think works a little bit better animated than not. Is this like the idea is that she's kind of thrust and hit the ground several times. Like that's what we're getting like the boom, 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 boom from. As she sort of chases Ichigo down, maybe like rabbit hopping into more punches. Of course, Kisuke gives Ichigo a compliment, nice fleeing, which is really a compliment. I mean, if he wasn't able to flee, then he wouldn't be able to overcome her. But I think that also is a reminder that Ichigo's, sure, maybe he'll get to run away, but he actually has to confront this foe in order to actually move on in his training. So, in a lot of ways, it's a reminder of all of that. Yeah, geez. Good use of like simplification for these more comedic bits, and then getting really, really close and intense for those more serious moments, and sort of interweaving the two in a very effective way. Yet again, I do wish that there was something that illustrative in this panel rather than just the speed lines, but that's how it goes. It works here well enough, I'm sure. But just wish there was more. But yeah, I like that Ichigo, of course, comes to this conclusion, like, well, if I can run away and dodge her, then maybe I can actually evade and hit her, which is a cool kind of conclusion to come to. If you do remember, Don Kanoji specifically praised Ichigo on like his quick thinking instead of combat and all of that. And so it's cool that we get a little bit of that here, like actually in practice. And I think that's one thing that's maybe easy to overlook, is the ways that different characters fight and like where it works for them and where it isn't. Ichigo very much is like a figure it out in the middle of a battle kind of person, like fuck around and find out. Which I mean obviously works well for a protagonist, because you want them to be in a battle where like they have to discover how to win along the way, instead of going in and just being a complete stomp every time, one way or the other. So you want them to kind of be fighting by the skin of their teeth, and then they have these sorts of breakthrough moments, and that's exciting to read. And so I like that that's built early on as a character trait here for Ichigo, and that we actually see that in effective practice without being spelled out to us either. Like, he kind of comes to this conclusion naturally, and then turns and does the thing, rather than like, us getting these panels of your horror like, oh, well, he's realized by now that if he can run, then he may be able to counter the attack, and it's that realization that would give him an edge, or anything like that, right? There's certainly ways that you could have this over narrated or over explained, but I like that this moment is allowed to actually exist on its own. I also really like the framing here of using Ichigo like turning to face Ururu as this big middle sort of panel, as we have these other 4 smaller panels, the top left and top right of Ichigo like kind of looking inward. I think those direct the eye in a very effective way, but then also I like that we get his shoe in the bottom right, and we get Ururu in the bottom left, and she's approaching from the bottom left of the larger panel. So just like visually, this blocks really well, where we have Ururu associated in this bottom left panel, and in the bottom left of this panel, we have Ichigo in the top right, as well as top left, but these kind of connect to help us pull over here as we read down. And then, of course, we get his foot in the bottom right along with his feet in the bottom right. So, I don't know. It just visually all kind of works for me, especially in this moment of like Ichigo, like rushing, stopping, turning to face, and then confronting kind of Ururu in this moment as she approaches with this charge. And then, of course, we get this very narrow dodge from Ichigo. I like that we get the reaction of Ururu realizing that she is missed entirely. And then, of course, Ichigo comes back with a strike and she dodges because she knows what's up. Now we get Ichigo on the offensive, which is cool. And again, I think this is a moment that, like, maybe more than the previous one works, on panel well enough, is that we have these like little like tum 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 across the bottom to really sell the idea of him making multiple punches. The speed lines are minimal but really effective here, and by speed lines I just mean that these between the two characters are the ones behind Ichigo here and the ones in between them that show kind of Ururu's form as she's fainting back. Yeah, I think the other speed lines also help to sell this, like just like these long horizontals. But yeah, this is a neat moment where Ichigo, even though he's decided to actually compete, he's still having these hesitations, right? But he's like still pleading, like, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm not going to hit you in the face, I just want to attack your headgear. He's realizing his own advantages too, like his actual size and the length at which he can punch from. Obviously, if he wanted to, he can lean into the punch and clobber her real good. So, yeah, that's what he decides on. Then he's going to give her head a one tap and put her through. I like that, of course, this page ends on this fist coming from Ichigo. This really nice kind of kineticism built between this and then the fist coming down. And then, of course, we have to turn page to get the outcome of that, which is this glancing blow from Ichigo, right? I do like this moment of Uru being very cognizant of the bloodshed there, and then immediately going like wide-eyed and attacking Ichigo, maybe with her full power, who knows. But Ichigo immediately realizing something's wrong, I think really sells this moment as terrifying. The other really cool thing here, and this is why you follow your own rules in general, because whenever you break them, it's that much more notable and interesting. But here, I love how this is pretty understated, is that we have Ururu standing outside of the panel itself as she steps onto Ichigo's arm. And so that does a couple of things. One, it really helps to establish the depth of this and like the actual, height of the moment. But like I said, the depth of, her standing on top of his arm, obviously it's going to seem like she's suddenly way closer than otherwise because she's always been at least, at punching length or further. So now she's in very close. But then also this idea that she's surprised us, the reader, perhaps, and is closed in this way that, has her kind of closer even over the panels themselves of the manga. And then she pulls back this massive kick. And before Ichigo can react, he is, of course, kicked across the dome, goes flying. We come to find that, of course, Kisuke, Ooh, I'm going to mix those up all the time. Kisuke has held Ururu's leg to keep it from, falling through maybe with the kick, who knows. I like that Ruru here is kind of making sure that she doesn't have some sort of wardrobe mishap, which I think I do appreciate. But yeah, um, very very good moment for here from Kisuke. And I like that Tessai was able to get there quick enough to catch Ichigo and brace him, and take the full brunt of that, knocking him into the mountain. So here we get this really kind of neat moment that helps to end the fight, but also really quickly establish with Tessai is, we knew he was a serious force already with him like palming Hollow's faces off, but like him being able to move that quickly to get behind Ichigo and like help him brace the attack at least is fantastic. And then of course we get all this explained to a degree as Ichigo feels like he's failed, but realizes that the actual lesson, as Urahara states, is of course that he just had to survive, right? And get to the point where he could hit back. Of course, I like that here he makes the distinction of human Kanpaku, right? Rather than one that isn't human. But then also there's this idea of consuming spirits, right? Or not consuming. What am I saying? I'm reading too many things at once here. This, whew, that was a complete brain fart moment. Anyway, what I'm saying is that we get this notion of maybe that there are these sort of other Kanpaku, because we know about modern Kanpaku, right? Kan is that from Kanpaku. So it's interesting that we have this moment of really establishing Ururu having Soul Reaper level combat skills. I like that, of course, we get the outcome of this, which it's nice that they built this in the earlier, last chapter. Like you're having trouble breathing, once the Kanpaku usually doesn't exist this way, you're gonna struggle, etc., etc. And so we've gotten to see Ichigo actually develop, and it does. It's true, it all actually developed after that punch. Like Ichigo has this kind of sudden realization, starts to talk it out and kind of figure it out. Here we get Urahara being particularly cheeky and explaining a pretty important thing, which I think this is another thing that's pretty easy to remember because it's introduced here early in Bleach. Or I say easy to remember, easy to forget. Mixing up everything tonight. Sorry, folks. Easy to forget, but is important, is this idea that your Reiatsu, your spirit energy, increases really quickly whenever your Kanpaku or your spiritual body is put into these life or death situations, right? So the more that you have these life or death scrapes, so long as you survive, the more powerful that you will get. In fact, that's the like a more quickly way, or most quickly way. So it's like the fastest way to power yourself up is to go through these very extreme life or death situations. So you can imagine the people that have been in a lot of fights are exponentially stronger than those that haven't. But then also you have to consider, Ichigo's pretty powerful, and maybe one of the reasons that he's like that is that he's been putting into these life or death situations constantly from childhood, right? That he had this sort of thing happen with his mom, that he was training in martial arts camp even before that as a little kid. Certainly people weren't trying to murder him, but, nevertheless. And I know that I just cited two times whenever he was human and not like a Kanpaku, right? But I think that still counts to a certain degree for sure. Because for Shinigami, that's always a Kanpaku or a spiritual kind of body. What is the difference? There is none. And since that's always linked to you, I think that's always going to be the case. And so this kind of really helped me read early Bleach and get the sense of like Ichigo's progression feeling a little bit more natural, because he's been being put in these life or death situations, and his spirit energy is increasing rapidly because of that. And then also that makes sense for Orihime and Chad awakening their powers in the middle of those fights because they were literally put in these life or death situations. Their spiritual energy increased and their powers reacted and kind of manifested because of that. So that's all kind of neat stuff, and something that we will see throughout the series, but is easy to kind of forget because it's sort of just mentioned here, and then as far as I remember, more or less dropped. But yeah, we'll see if that comes up, and I just forgot. um, of course, I like that it's explained that, like, obviously if his spirit energy increases, then he'll be able to evade more punches. So already somebody's Reiatsu or their spirit energy is being tied to their capability as a martial sort of combatant. So it's not just like, oh, you have a lot of spirit energy, you can pump that into like lasers or something, but it's like, oh, you have a lot of spiritual energy, it's easy for you to like breathe and be in combat and dodge and be faster, you know? Of course, Kisuke explaining that if everything didn't work out, then he'd be dead. And it's like, well, yeah, of course. The other big thing is, I mentioned this because Ishin also constantly is trying to take Ichigo by surprise and attack him. And so, in a way, maybe that's also helped Ichigo increase his spiritual energy because he's had all these sorts of life or death situations since he was young, otherwise. Anyway, I like that they say let's celebrate, and we go from having all these like really quirky or horror moments. Ichigo being like, oh yeah, dinner or a party or something, and you immediately hop into the next stage of his training as Tessai severs the chain that Ichigo has to his body, literally killing him. So like, you're still getting knocked out of your body. You're not dead. You're just unconscious, and you're experiencing this out of body soul experience, right? You're viewing things from the point of view of your spiritual body, but you're still connected to your actual body, so you're still technically even though you're unconscious, you're still alive, right? Until your soul returns to your body, that's just how it's going to be. But with that, as you remember, as Ruki has said way back in those early chapters of Orihime, so long as the chain's connected, you're fine, you're still alive. It getting severed or broken, that's whenever you will begin to hollow, whenever you're actually dead. So it's kind of wild, if you think about it, like who's the first person to actually, deliver a lethal blow to Ichigo? Usually people will say like, oh, Grand Fisher, or they might say, it was Baikua, but actually, literally, it's Tessai. Those other people, sure, they wounded him grievously, but it's Tessai that actually kills Ichigo here. So, kind of notable and pretty extreme, at this point. Obviously, we've never seen Ichigo put in this sort of situation before, and we have to wonder exactly what can be gained from this really extreme moment. But Ichigo, like as Kisuke's already set up, his training is very much like do or die, right? It's very extreme. So the first training was, hey, I'm going to send somebody that's trying to kill you after you. If you can survive this first attack, it's going to bolster enough of your spiritual power, your Reiatsu, so that you can be strong enough to actually compete with a Soul Reaper level enemy. And so now it's like, okay, well, what's this next level of his training? Does it have something to do with getting his Soul Reaper powers back? Maybe that'll be explained in due time. But you know, it's we're hopping right into it, and Kisuke doesn't look perturbed one bit as Ichigo sees. I love the shot of the chain, this close up with Ichigo looking at it. I think this is really effective, especially yet again framing wise. We come in this panel, we get this strong action from right to left, which is how we're reading the manga anyway. So it's just good effective framing of this point of action, but also it really sells the center as this like the kind of point of view. And so basically, if you look at all of the major lines in this, like we have here, this chain is pointing towards the axe smash. His chain is pointing down. The arm is the slope of his like arm and his leg. Here they point to Kisuke, but Kisuke is then looking straight over to Tessai. So pretty much all of the way that things are angled and slanted, it's going to draw your eye naturally to where this axe is chopping. So like you're very naturally drawn to this point of interest, which is important. Not all the time in action scenes does this get done right, like where the actual point of interest or the point of impact is as visually kind of sold as this. This is very clean. I like it, but it also does a really good thing with the next panel where all our point of interest is sort of in the middle towards the bottom, so it pulls us also towards the next panel naturally, but with our eyes still focused on this kind of middle of panel point of interest. Here we get the result of what we had previously with the chain shattered there. And as we know, that is bad news because Ichigo will, continue to have his chain whittled down until he becomes a hollow or concepts performed on him, right? Just like anybody else, any other soul. So that's something to think about. What is Kisuke's plan for step 2, lesson 2? We'll have to find out because we jump back to Orihime and Chad. They are talking to Mr. Yoriichi, and of course, we get the insight that they're insisting on going to Soul Society, but they will be taught these lessons, and we get this very dramatic moment of Yoriichi explaining that their lessons aren't for the faint of heart. So we get the sense that both Chad and Orihime are perhaps going to undergo an ordeal that is as life or death as Ichigo is going through. Of course, I like this in between bit as Chad's realizing that Orihime is willing to just sign up for that sort of thing, that she's very serious and has guts. I think that's a cute sort of moment and realization for him to have, even if it isn't on page, but in this little extra bit in the collected volume. So, all in all, a lot of very clean art, a lot of cool stuff, neat expressions. Oh, I was going to say the other cool thing. So I mentioned Ruru's expression earlier, and that she has that kind of pivotal turn, that happening like right whenever she gets injured. So I don't know that I talked about this as much as I did, but I really like this zoom in on her eyes here, especially the kind of triple panel that almost comes out of the bottom left from her eye here, where we get the focus over here to her cheek. It bloodies, the blood spills, and then we immediately, after having this zoom in on their eyes, get this really serious expression from her. I think it's just another moment of the artwork really selling this really dire moment, um, where then it goes on the full attack, right, as she's been truly provoked. So we get the sense that even with her being able to kill him in one hit, she might have been pulling her punches, which is exciting. And we have to wonder, what's going on with Ururu, especially if she's, you know, well, I say especially if she's younger than Jinsei. I think he just treats her like she's, the younger one, but she's been here longer, if I remember from that first conversation. We've been rereading this, but I still can't even remember that. They get introduced fairly early on, so maybe I'll go back and look at it. But something to keep in mind. Regardless, she's obviously got something going on with her to be this powerful, this young. But underneath Kisuke's tutelage, maybe that just makes sense, like that he knows so much about what it takes to empower spirits and to gain all of this power. And so if he's putting together this force, maybe he needs to train people from these early ages. And certainly anybody that works in tandem with him might be, appropriately powerful because Kisuke has all of these ideas, all these ways to train and sort of unlock these powers. Anyway, that's it for this chapter. Yet again, like I said, another chapter I like. Lots of really strong moments here. I think, what I remember most fondly really is just like Ichigo kind of having that realization that he can fight back, and then fighting back, and then things getting turned back upon him. Him still sort of winning despite it not seeming like a clear victory, and then of course his chain getting shattered. All of that is like the really highlighted moments for me. The stuff with Chad and Orihime is just a single page. I do like that we get that they're being kind of inducted in, and that Yoriichi has some plans for them as well. That's cool. I think that builds the intrigue towards the next couple chapters in a way that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. I mean, we kind of got it before with the phone call, but this is just more elaboration on that. But yeah, I am a fan. Move my mouse here. I am a fan of this chapter. I think it's good stuff. As always, in the comments, please do let me know what you think, what your thoughts are, if you have any takeaways from this that I didn't, or if you want to talk about anything that I said, especially if you disagree or something's wrong. Notably, someone pointed out in the previous chapter that there was a mistranslation that I didn't catch about whether or not Renji was taken in by the Ch.60 family like 40 years ago, right? And then the actual translation is supposed to be just in regards to Rukia whenever she was taken in. But the mistranslation I think implies that both of them were, that Renji was, whereas that was not the case. And so yeah, whenever I was reading that, I didn't remember if that was just something that I forgot, like the fact that Renji might have been taken in at some point or not, because obviously Rukia has been, right. Her whole deal is that she's kind of been adopted into this noble family, and perhaps that's the reason for Baiku's contempt for her, is that she doesn't really belong there. Who knows, right? We'll have to come to find out. But like she certainly is kind of out of place within this family, and perhaps even out of place within Soul Society, and that she's maybe found more of a family amongst the humans, despite having looked down upon them so much before spending an elongated time on Earth. Anyway, but yeah, important to point out stuff like that. So I really do appreciate getting that sort of thing in my comments, and I made sure to pin that comment too on the other video. Anyway, let's talk about spoilers. Let's get into it. This is chapter 60 of Bleach. There are quite a few little things to talk about that connect to the rest of the chapters, to the rest of the manga. Here we get in this chapter our first kind of sense of Ururu having that transformation, or that like kind of like kill switch sort of thing where she goes into a berserk mode. We see this again in the fight against Ilfort, I believe. She ends up getting pierced on his horn, and then Renji has to save the day. But it is interesting that it comes up much later. It reminds me a lot of Nemo, right? That Nemo can be kind of flown into these sorts of like intense fighting moments, or it's almost like a rage, perhaps. In a lot of ways, Ururu and Nemo share a lot of parallels, and I've got to figure, basically, Urahara had cracked the code on making another person with Ururu, but Mayuri's constant kind of chasing of perfection and all of that has begetted Nemo. But they're very similar beings in the fact that there are these kind of artificial girls that are really good at combat, really powerful. Anyway, let's see. Fucking headband injustice. I mean, I talked about a lot of this stuff in the regular analysis for this video, so I'm not gonna try not to be redundant and cover it more than it needs to be. Trying to think of what else. I do like that we do get Ichigo kind of fist fighting here. I wish we got more martial sort of stuff from Ichigo. I mean, obviously we have him swinging his sword a bunch. We get all the Getsugas and Getsuga Tenchos in the world. But we don't see a lot of Ichigo just like fist fighting people. And I don't know, I think that's a lost opportunity for a little, a little bit. The idea being that maybe maybe those techniques could be used on somebody else. I mean, I know that we get to see a refrain of that whenever he takes out the 3 vice captains on the top of the Sokotsuku Hill, however it's pronounced, basically before Rukia's execution, and he pummels, I think it is Momo and Omeda and Troskibe, whatever the guy's name is, division number 1. guy. Anyway, I just wish that we had more Ichigo punching and kicking stuff, and just otherwise being cool martial fighter, because it is cool to get it here. Let's see. Other things to connect. So, obviously, we're talking about Ururu. Here we get that mention of this girl having Soul Reaper level combat skills, so clearly she's been trained but not made a Soul Reaper, or perhaps even a Hollow. So, we have to wonder exactly what kind of entity that Ururu even is. I fully think she's completely artificial. I'm not so sure about Jinta. Anyway, the idea that she has Soul Reaper level combat skills rather than this is a Soul Reaper is notable. Also, this idea of getting a power boost after having been close to death is for sure something that my friends do all the time. No, it's for sure something that comes up later in Bleach too. That these characters kind of have these huge boosts. In DBZ, it's like the Zenkai boost, right? But that's usually what people refer to this to, right? Coming close to death, having these sorts of deathly scrapes, but then coming out of it stronger. It's what makes the Saiyans so dangerous. But also, it's the case for everybody in Bleach. So, as we come to find out, like as his spirit energy increases, your ability to evade increases, and so like your speed increases. But as we know, that there's an upper limit on how much a human can actually, or even anything on their own, really. But obviously, a Soul Reaper can really have as far as Reiatsu goes, and so holification is a good way to increase that amount. But for most people, it will just result in soul suicide, which is a problem. So, kind of neat that that's loosely brought up here. Also neat that they immediately cut his chain. I think that's real good stuff. I like the idea that this chain has been this kind of incorporeal thing, or has been around, but it hasn't really been explicitly mentioned until here. Otherwise, I don't really remember Yurishi giving ridiculous lessons with the two of them. Maybe memory's hazy. But I like that it is Tessai to deliver this, not just because he's the big strong man, but also, because they're really hollowifying Ichigo here, right? And both Tessai and Kisuke overlooked this sort of thing whenever this happened with the Visored, right? I mean, and clearly Kisuke was involved in a lot of holification sort of processes anyway. But I just like that Tessai is the one that actually delivered the blow, being the Executo Corp sort of leader, and the one sort of trying to aid Kisuke through this entire ordeal with Ichigo to kind of make him stronger. So all that tracks for me. I think it's all cool. But let me know what you think. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. What else you think sort of connects to other chapters? If you see any connections I didn't, please let me know. This is not my first time recording this. I've been having issues with the recording, so hopefully this one is all good and dandy, and I'll hope to get this one to you. But as always, thank you so much for listening. This has been Karakura Gold with Bleach Revisited, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.